Hey gang, hope you're all doing really well. And I've decided this week to do a very short video, just basically picking up from where from what Dinho's video was talking about last week. So he did a video about playing thousands of different songs with one finger, which was awesome. If you haven't seen that video yet, go and check it out. And today I thought what I would do is stick with the one finger principle. Dinho touched on this in his video about playing a sort of a blues sequence. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity really to just explore that idea a little bit further. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to walk you through some basic 12-bar blues stuff and how you might play that with one finger in multiple keys, and then some little embellishments to go with that. So yeah, if you're not really interested in blues stuff, this particular video probably won't be great for you. The blues sequence is a great sequence to get into. It teaches you a lot about rhythm and the harmony and the feel that you need in your playing to play a lot of other songs. So it's a good starting point, and of course loads of us just like to play cool old blues stuff anyway. So here we go, my trusty acoustic guitar, and today this guitar is tuned differently. The top 4 strings, which are the thinner strings on the guitar, are tuned to concert tuning. So the D string is tuned to D, G, B, and E. Just in case you're new to the terminology as well, I should mention that the thinnest, lightest strings we call the top strings, and the lowest, thickest strings we call the bottom strings. Even though when you look at a guitar, that's the wrong way around, but we tend to refer to things in terms of pitch. So the top strings are the highest pitched strings on the guitar, which are the ones that are down here at the bottom. Yeah, so basically the top 4 strings are tuned to concert tuning, but I have dropped the A string down to G, which is what Dinho did last week. So now we have G, D, G, B, and E. We're not really going to use the top strings anyway. And then the low E string, I've detuned it to C. So that is 2 tones lower than it would normally be. So it would normally be an E, but I've tuned it to C. So last week in Dinho's video, he detuned it to D, which wasn't quite as low as I'm going now. So it's 4 steps, 4 frets, 4 semitones, or 2 tones lower than it should be. So now we have C there. So it's C, G, D, G, B, and E. The reason why I've dropped that low E string so low will become apparent now. So in the G sequence, the 12-bar sequence, the 3 chords involved would be G, C, and D. The sequence will start for 4 bars on the G. So as we've open tuned to G here, our chord, if we just play, say, 3 notes, 3 strings, 3 open strings. So we're going to play the 5th string, which is tuned to G, the 4th string, which is D, and the 3rd string, which is G. That gives us what we call a G5 chord. Okay, so this is basically a power chord. And yeah, I'm not playing the top 2 strings, I'm leaving them, I'm just playing. So I'm playing that without hitting the bottom E string, which is tuned to C. That's just a practice thing, I think. Something to bear in mind. So I'm assuming that your picking hand, you've at least got a thumb and a forefinger to hold a pick. So this is how we're doing this video with a pick. You could do it without. But yeah, basically, one key thing is to try and anchor your arm and your hand against the bridge of the guitar like this, because it makes you much more accurate. Sometimes you see people starting out playing and they're like this, and that is very hard to be accurate there. So make sure you want to be wrapped around the guitar as much as possible. Bring it in really nice and close to you. So the closer it is to you, the more anchored you are and the more control you've got. And this will help you when you're playing nice little economical motions like that. And I'm not hitting the bottom string. And what we're going to do is we're only going to fret 1 note. So this is the traditional 12-bar blues guitar rhythm playing, and pianos sometimes play something similar to this as well. I was brought up with this being called a racka racka because it sounds like racka racka, I suppose. The groove that we're aiming to get to is something like this. Okay, so to get that, what I'm doing is I'm only fretting one string and one note. So I'm playing I'm fretting on the D string, and I'm fretting up to the second fret, which is now making that an E. So that is the only thing that is changing. So what we have is, and then yeah, one finger, one string, one note's being fretted. The beat is 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can just practice that without playing the fretting part of it, and just try and keep it steady and controlled. It doesn't matter if it's slower. You can build up. So then the line becomes, nothing has changed with my right hand, I'm still doing the same thing. Quite simple. That is the rhythm part basically throughout the whole of the sequence, and all we're going to do now is move that around to change key, which is what happens during the course of a 12-bar sequence. So it starts off in G. So that is 4 bars, I think. And at that point we need to change, and we need to go to the 4th. That will be C. So what I've done is I've detuned this bottom E string to C. This means that we can transplant that exact thing that we were playing down a string, and we make the change. So it sounds like this. So we've made our change, which is great, and we're still only using the same shape. So instead of playing those 3 strings, we're now moving it down a string to the bottom E string, which is tuned to C, and we're not now playing the 3rd string. Are we? No, we're not. We're not playing that D string. So now we're only playing the 2 strings, and we're moving our fretting finger down from the D string to the A string, which is tuned to G. So yeah, the line is exactly the same, really. I hope you can see that clearly. Maybe zoom in or something like that. And that's our change, and I think we sit there for 2 bars basically, so our sequence is building up quite nicely. Here we go. And back. Okay, so we're now however many bars through our sequence. I don't know how many bars we're in, but like 10 bars or 8 bars or something like that. So we're nearly there, and we've done it all with one finger and hardly any movement. I mean, because the finger really, if you look at that, and then, I mean, it's literally, there's hardly any movement here going on at all. There's one further change that we need to make this a 12-bar sequence and complete the sequence, and that is to go to D. So in order to go to the D, I'm suggesting that we start on the D string, which is, it's already the root of the chord that we want to go to. And if we fret the G string, on the 2nd fret, so this is all 2nd fret, you've noticed. Every bit of fretting that I'm doing is all on the 2nd fret, really, apart from the bit that's about to happen now. So those 2 strings plucked like that, you have to hold your finger on the G string. That's playing a D5 chord, and we're only playing those 2 strings now. We're not playing the 3 strings. Okay, but in order to create the rhythm and the melody that we've been using, this. So this time, this is the chord, we're not able to leave that open. So we're going to employ a sort of a movement here with our one finger. So that might take you a little bit of time to get accurate with, but again, do it slowly to start with. push too hard on the strings either. I think it's very important that if you're struggling to fret notes or you're noticing that there's grooves, tram lines happening in your fingers, the strings might be too heavy on your guitar, the action might be too high on your guitar. It's important to have these things checked. I see a lot of beginner guitar players playing guitars that I would consider to be almost unplayable, and that makes your job learning to play the instrument infinitely harder. So that's something that maybe we'll cover in another video, what to look out for on your guitar, and try to make it as easy as possible. There are no awards for playing guitars that are hard to play. No one will ever give you an award for that. And as Dinho mentioned in his previous video, he recommends nylon strung guitars because they are inherently easier to fret than the strings. The strings are much easier to bend and play with. But if you are playing a steel strung guitar, making sure the strings are not too heavy, meaning the gauge is not too high, so they're thinner strings within reason, is a good idea when you're starting to play. And also making sure the action, which is the height of the strings above the fingerboard, is not too high. If the action is high, you've got to push the string down harder to fret a note, which as a beginner, you probably don't have calluses on the tips of your fingers. So that will make it even worse because it takes a while to build up thickened skin like a climber does, or someone who, anybody who does any sort of repetitive activity with their hands will know you get thickened skin and calluses on the bits where there are friction. So certainly making sure the guitar is as playable as possible. And these things are quite easy to do. You don't necessarily even need to get a professional to set a guitar up for you. So anyway, I've digressed about that. There's another video there, isn't it? How to set up a guitar to make it as playable as possible. But yeah, back to this change to D. And we actually only sit on there for a bar. Is that one bar? I think it's a bar. And then we go back to the C. So you remember with the C, the chord is made before we even fret the note. With this D chord, we need to fret that note to make the basis of the chord, and then, yeah, back to the C. And then that's the end of the sequence. So let's hear the whole sequence together. I'll play it through really slowly once. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's our 12-bar blues sequence. Yeah, so I think the challenges of playing this if you're starting out is having the control, because although we're not moving this way up and down the neck, which is great from a playing with one finger perspective, we are moving up and down the strings, aren't we? We've got a chord that begins on the A string, we've got a chord that begins on the bottom E string, and we've got a chord that begins on the D string. And when we're playing these chords, we don't want to be playing the strings that we don't want. Obviously, that might sound obvious, but if I play that D with the G and the strings below in that, that doesn't sound good. So we need to be isolating. So accuracy with your right hand is quite important. And I think we don't want to be doing this kind of motion. We want to be doing an anchored motion here, where your palm is against the body of the guitar, and that gives you this control to hit that string. You can see my hand is hardly moving here at all. It's very, very minimal movement. And I think at the beginning of this video I told you that actually when we were playing the G chord, I was playing the 3 notes, but actually just playing the 2 notes is absolutely fine. And it's not even really a shortcut, because if you listen to a lot of really seasoned blues guitar players, people like Jimmy Vaughan, Stevie Ray, they didn't really play, it didn't sound like that. It was much more aggressive on the bottom two notes of the power chord. More on power chords later. By tuning the guitar in this way, essentially what we've created is a set of power chords, or 5 chords, which you can play with one finger. Yeah, so I'll play the whole thing through a bit quicker and with a bit more of a groove to it. Okay, sounds good. You're off and running playing a 12-bar sequence. Where do we go from here? Let's imagine that's the only 12-bar sequence that you can play, and you've learnt it this way. You've got your 3 chords in the sequence, all of it available and accessible to you in that way with one finger, but you need to play it in a different key. If you turn up at a blues jam night and you play this kind of rhythm, everyone will love you for it, because everyone else is too worried about trying to show off and play all these different kinds of things. If you can lay down a rhythm work like this, you'll be invited back to every blues jam you ever go to, because drummers and bass players and singers will love you for being able to play this rhythm. But let's imagine now that you turn up at a jam and you've got your 12-bar sequence nailed, but they're not playing it in G. That's okay, isn't it? That doesn't matter. So let's just imagine that they're playing it in C. So let's say that there's a piano at the gig and they want you to play in C. Well, that's what one of these is for. Here you go. This is going to be your best friend as a one-fingered guitar player, okay? So now, you whip out your capo. You'll see when I've put the capo on, I've put it quite close to the fret, okay? So this is now, we're creating a new nut. We've moved the nut up to here, okay? And you'll notice I haven't put the capo like there, okay, between the frets. That's not great. I want it to be as close to that fret without being on the fret as possible, which creates a cleaner. Can you see how I've done that there? I think it creates a cleaner contact with the string. And you want the capo to be tight enough so that the strings don't move, but not so tight that it bends them into the fingerboard in between the frets, okay? So now our guitar is tuned to C. But essentially tuned to C, and all of the same thing works. So here we go. Okay, there we go. So you've made your key change. Same thing, you know, you turn up to a jam night and they say that it's in D. Now we're in D. The whole thing just moves around the fingerboard, and you've got infinite numbers of blues 12-bar sequence keys at your disposal. And I think that what I've shown you here today, you could probably get to that point from not playing a guitar within a couple of weeks, 5 to 10 minutes a day. Doing that, I think within a couple of weeks you could probably have that down. You know, it's not that complicated. The biggest thing probably is just getting your fingers used to fretting the notes, not pushing too hard, making sure the guitar's set up okay, and getting the control on the right hand. It's worth forgetting the left hand for a while and just going. Because to get that rhythm, it doesn't sound the same if it's... It's okay like that, but you can hear the notes are ringing out. If you're playing rhythm work, it has to be rhythmic. So the muting, a lot of the muting here is happening on this hand. Which is why you can see what I'm doing. I'm lifting my hand up here and putting it back on the strings to create that mute and clamp down on them to create that quite staccato rhythm. There's some little techniques like that. I mean, we could go on for hours, couldn't we, talking about these sorts of things. The idea here is just to get you started, and then maybe if you want to fire back some questions about how to get that to sound percussive and tight, you know, we'll happily make other videos about those specific issues. But yeah, just before I sign off for the day, And I'm sorry for the low production values of this video. We are absolutely flat out as a band at the moment, and I'm back in Wales, and I haven't got any camera gear with me or anything, and it's a bit dark in this room, and I know the light is changing, so I apologise for all of that. But yeah, before I go, I just wanted to show you some other embellishments that you can add. So there's one that goes at the end of the 12-bar sequence, and usually we briefly return to that fifth chord at the end of the sequence, and it goes something like this. So basically what happens is it just briefly for half a bar goes to that fifth chord and then resolves back to the root note, and the sequence starts again. So it leads into the next sequence. Incidentally, that's the beautiful thing about a 12-bar sequence. And I think the history of how we ended up at a 12-bar sequence, because it evolved quite organically. And it's a very unusual sequence because many other sequences in songwriting need a change. They need a middle eight or they need a chorus, and you feel after a certain period of time like it needs to change to a different harmony. This is part of like songwriting, and it's a very complicated subject. But a 12-bar sequence, because of the way it resolves from that fifth back to the root note and it goes off merrily along its way again, it never feels like it needs any other sequence. It can go on forever, and you never feel like it needs a change or it needs to resolve to something else. And that's the beauty of the sequence, and I think it evolved to be like that because old blues quite often was 13.5 bar. You listen to Elmore James or Robert Johnson, you know, there's 8-bar sequences, there's 12-bar, there's 14-bar sequences, and I think it just evolved into this thing which sounds so right, and it just doesn't, it resolves so nicely every time. But yeah, so that basically is the end of the sequence. But usually players will do something to get you into that little change and then to resolve back. So a typical one would be okay, so that's a nice little thing, isn't it? So this is a very, very simple little lick. So we've come from the fifth back to the fourth, and then so basically this is a very similar line. So we're sitting on our G, we've come back to the G, and instead of fretting the note on the second fret, we're now fretting the note on the third fret. Let's just keep it simple for the time being. Yeah, let's play it like that. So I'm playing the same rhythm. So I'm not going to go into too much detail there because I'm sure you can clearly see what I'm doing. The right hand is staying exactly the same, but I'm just playing chromatically downwards through these three notes until we get to the open D. Really very simple. And generally, we would not play the second part of the rhythm motif here. We wouldn't play that last one. We'd let it hang before going back to that D chord. So I'll just play the last few changes from the fifth to the fourth, D to the C, back to the G, and then this little motif at the end. And the sequence starts again. If you want to get a little bit more technical, we could now play which I'm sure you're hearing that and thinking, that's blues, that is totally blues, you've heard that a million times before, it's one of those staple blues licks. So actually you can see here, a bit of harmony training, what is happening here. we're sort of resolving to that D before there's the cadence from the D back to the G. So yeah, that's a little fiddly bit. So again, this video is if you're using a pick, but yeah. So that's basically the G note, the G string open. And if you want to try and do something to help you develop your pick technique, a great way of developing techniques is by learning to play things with those techniques already built in. So don't get into bad habits. You might as well, if you're going to learn to play a lick, try and get into a good habit with that lick. So a good habit with this one would be to use alternate picking, which is up and down strokes, basically. So I'm playing a downstroke on the plectrum when I'm fretting that D string. I'm playing an upstroke with the plectrum when I'm playing the open G string, and a downstroke again when I'm playing the fretted note. So it is down, up, down. I'm sorry, I keep looking at here on the video because I'm looking at what I'm teaching you. It means I'm not looking at you. I'm sorry about that. Bit disconcerting, isn't it? But yeah, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down. Okay? Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down. So you can hear that's sort of, there's two different ways of doing something, or three different ways. One would be just sitting on that, that's okay, but you could do, that's better, or you could do, that's much better again, you know. So I think this sort of building up to sort of all of the twiddly bits which make you sound really pro is best to get the chords and the rhythm done first. So get comfortable with this, work on your right hand technique, get comfortable with the changes. Try and get the right hand moving between those strings. And then add things in. Yeah, basically I think that's probably quite good. Dinho mentioned in his video that with these sorts of tunings, you can embellish things quite simply. So I will do some, I'll do some embellishments throughout the sequence, just using the index finger on either the second or third frets. I haven't got enough time to go into all this in detail, and I'm aware the video is going to get too long. It's already half an hour I've been shooting this for. But I'm just going to give you a flavour of some of the embellishments that you can add. So again, in this spirit of starting with the basics and then gradually adding some things in, maybe I could do a video on one-fingered embellishments. I don't know why, but somehow that sounded slightly dodgy. But yeah, so I'll just do something improv, and then maybe it's something we can address in a different video. So. Yeah, so hopefully you could hear there, that was a much more interesting sequence, and you wouldn't necessarily want to do that all the time, and I was trying to fit as many of them in as I possibly could, but there's a lot of things here. Yeah, lots and lots of different things you can do there. I accidentally used another finger there, didn't I? But yeah, maybe that's for another video. But sometimes it's difficult shooting these videos and knowing when to stop, because trying to show you some basic things about the 12-bar sequence is very easy for me to start. It would be very easy for me to start talking about harmony and why things happen. But I think if you're at the point where you want to pick up a guitar, bash out a bit of blues, good enough to go and have a jam with friends and somebody could sing over the top of it and play a harmonica and that sort of thing, then you don't really need to be knowing in depth harmony and that kind of stuff. So I hope that's been useful. Maybe what I'll try and do in the next lesson is pick up from this and move it forward a little bit, add some more complicated stuff in. Yeah. I mean, that's all just in this tuning that we've been experimenting with one finger. Yeah, look, there we go. That's all for today. I hope this has been a useful, informative video. Please, as always, leave comments, tell us your stories. We want to know. It's all grist to our mill. You know, what things you're contending with, what you're struggling with, what instruments you want to learn to play. And if you could share this video with your friends and family. The thing about sharing this stuff is there could be people out there who don't know that we're doing this, you know. So if you've seen it and you've enjoyed it and you want to share it, it might reach some of those other people who are struggling, or, you know, parents who've got kids who want to play and they think, oh, they can't play, how are we going to make that happen? Or if you're, you know, a teacher. Yeah, as always, you know, please share, like, subscribe, and let us know what you think and what things you're struggling with. Thanks very much for watching. See you next week, guys. Cheerio for now.